Is this thing on? I think it is. Hey everybody, my name is Derek and I am the owner, creator, and head silicone slinger here at Amavidi, where we make silicone toys for adults. All right, we have a monster tonight. Tonight, it's afternoon. And there's a reason why it's afternoon, because this monster is in a totally different time zone. So we have Fergus Monster from Monster Smash Studios, and we have a reveal. We are going to get to see Fergus Monster's face for the first time. And this will be fun, yeah. So we'll bring Fergus on in just a few minutes. But before we do that, you might have noticed we have a new patron from our Patreon, Isabel B. And I want to thank all of our patrons. It's a small but distinguished list. And these are the kind of people that make these episodes possible. So thank you to all of our patrons. And if you, the people out there, would like to support us, if you like what we do, then jump over to Patreon, patreon.com/Amavidi, AMAVIDI.com. I always put the .com on there. Patreon.com/Amavidi. And, support us a little bit. I just released, last week, it's actually the first part of Chapter 2. Chapter 1 hasn't been written yet. It's an intro, and for some reason, it's always easy to write the intro after you write everything else. But the first part of Chapter 2 was released to the patrons last Monday, and this Monday, the second half of Chapter 2 will get released. So all the patrons are getting previews of the book that I'm working on, which is the Dildo Maker's Handbook. And if you want to check it out, this is all rough draft stuff, so you can give feedback and you'll be able to be a part of the process. And upcoming guests, we do have next weekend, we've got Something Squishy, This Way Comes. Yeah. So we've got Allison from Something Squishy, who will be our guest next Sunday. That will be at the usual time. That is 7 o'clock on Sunday evening. But today we are at 3 o'clock, my time, but it is 9 o'clock where Fergus is. And I'm going to bring Fergus on, and we are going to reveal what Fergus Monster looks like. Are you ready? Here we go. Fergus! How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. You said the line. I can't believe you said the line.
What line did I say?
Just sat here, man. You said you make toys for adults. I always make toys for adults.
Yeah, it is kind of become my line. So, but yeah, it's George is over here cackling, but
that's what she does.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever had the opportunity to interview a monster.
I mean, there's not many of us around. There's a lot of fleshy people walking around, so I suppose this will suffice. Most of the people who work for me are monsters in one way or another, but I suppose this is probably the most literal monster that you've seen in a while.
Yes. I mean, all of us are squishy in some sense, but none of them are quite as purple as you are.
Why, thank you. I put a lot of effort into grooming.
Well, okay, I appreciate you coming on. I know that you had the flu this week and that you are recovering, yeah. So I appreciate you making the time for us. And you are in a totally different time zone. I think it's, 9 o'clock where you are?
Yes, it is. Currently 8 minutes past 9 at night. Yeah. Although most of the people I seem to know in this community are about 6 hours or so behind me. So this is fairly normal. Yeah. Well, now you are with Monster Smash Studios, correct? Yes. I am the unfortunate soul that created it, and I'm still here.
Now, is it just you?
No, so I'm the one that does I used to say the physical work, but I'm the one that does the majority of the master prep. I do the silicone work, that sort of thing. And then I also do, the admin, the accounts, that sort of thing. But then I have a part-time accountant. I have Sticky, who is the newest member of the family. He's the one that does all of our resin printing. And then I've got Nix, who everyone knows. She does all of our products, and she designs for people that hire us. And I've got Scribble Monster, who does all of our illustration and 2D product design. So it's a fair few of us.
Now, I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. George will be wrangling those. She is in charge of the chat, and she will be feeding those to me as we go along. But there is one that I just can't let go by yet. Yash asks, what shampoo do you use? The hair is lovely.
I use Child's Farm because because I'm too cheap to buy my own one. I'll just use whatever I put on the kids.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, it looks fantastic, doesn't it? Let me. There we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, now I don't want to bring everybody down, but I usually start off by asking, why you get into this business. But you and I talked a little bit before the conversation today, and you did give me kind of a heads up, and I do want to give everybody else a little bit of a heads up that when we have this conversation here in the next couple of minutes, there is going to be, I want to give everybody a little bit of a content warning. There will be a little bit of discussion of death. So if that is an issue for anybody, you may want to hit mute for just a couple of minutes. And when we're done with that part, I'm going to put up a picture of Kai, and then you'll know it's okay to hit unmute, and then we can roll on. So why don't you take a moment and tell us, why did you get into this business?
Yeah, so we've been at this for like over 2 years now. And it started, sadly, with the death of my son. He passed away, and my wife and I were very much like in a position of trying to recover from that emotionally. And then, if you want to let people know that the worst bit is over, then that's absolutely fine.
Okay. There's a picture of Kai. Okay, so keep going.
Looks tasty. Yeah, so we're like, how do we progress from that? And one day my wife orders a box and she's got this smile on her and she hands it to me. I'm like, what's this? I don't know what this is. Open it up and it's Gage from Were Dog, and I'm like holding it. And I just can't stop laughing. Like, I knew of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen Bad Dragon on the internet.
Yeah.
But it just never crossed my mind. I just kept laughing. And she was really worried what I thought about it, and I just thought it was funny. So we just started getting used to toys. I learned about strange bedfellas. I saw there was Bad Dragon. We bought a couple pieces, but we are talking like a couple, like very small collection. We've never been collectors. I started to know a couple of names. I didn't know what a drop was. And that eventually led on to me just sat on the sofa one day saying, it'd be funny, like, I wonder how they make them, yada, yada, yada. And then my wife just starts walking out the room and just casually mentions, none of the makers around do anything for classic horror. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, like The Mummy, vampires, that sort of thing. Now, obviously, I went on to eventually learn about like monster cocks and things, so they are around, but they're in a completely different league. So I spent, I think it was about 9 months, researching how to make stuff. I already knew how to make molds because of my history with my old art degree, but this was like that was all plaster work, and this was completely different material that I've never used before. I've never used a computer for 3D modeling, so I originally had a business partner. And yeah, after lots of drama within the business and having to pick up literally everything without changing the deadline, eventually we launched in the 31st of July 2020.
So right in the midst of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I've said for a long time that there was very much like waves of shops, and
Mm-hmm.
I've always seen the first wave being the likes of my shop, Something Squishy, Linda, and Tibbs and Alex. Like we were very much felt like a core group that all happened to launch at the same time. We all met on the adult maker Discord that the creator ran. I think you were on there at the time as well. It was when I started doing all the design competitions and things like that when I took over as an admin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was originally run by Built Up Beast, wasn't it? Now, were
Yeah,
you
it
part of that
was.
as well?
He started it for like a week or two,
Mm.
but it was clear that there were a couple of incidences at the time with just some petty inviting, and obviously he's
Mm.
only in one time zone. So I
Okay.
suggest to him, I don't mind keeping an eye on it for another time zone. And then he just generally kind of floated away for a while. He was very busy with, his day job, running the running the shop because he already had one. So I ended up kind of partially taking over for quite a long time until I eventually stepped away when he did as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And now you said you had an art degree. What was your art degree? What was your focus?
So the plan always was for me to be a college art lecturer.
Mm.
So I don't know about other countries, but in the UK, you're required to have a specialism degree. So mine was art in two-dimensional design, and my major was ceramics. So I spent 3 years making things on a potter's wheel, making plaster molds and plaster masters and worrying about undercuts and all that sort of thing. So I did that for 3 years before I went into teaching.
Gotcha. All right. So making molds. You said you already had the experience of making molds, and now when you started, when you started making adult toys, did you start with silicone molds or did you start with clay masters? How did you start?
So because I already owned a 3D printer, I was like,
Mm.
this is the way, because
Okay.
then I don't need to worry about scaling, because I used to do a lot of hand sculpting from my degree, so I knew how hard it was. And I just thought, I don't want to do this. And my original business partner said he could do sculpting. And I thought, great, that means I can scale it
Mm-hmm.
without any problems whatsoever. So straight away we did 3D printing.
Okay.
And it was Chimera Forge that helped me because I kept making glove molds, and I've never made a glove mold before then.
Mm-hmm.
And they helped me do it in a way so it actually worked.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
So are you glove mold or are you block mold?
Oh no, I'm everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got everything. So the originals, I've still got some originals kicking around. They are glove molds. I've got lots of block molds, including the newest kaijus. Like one of them is a block mold, Zilla, because it's so tapered, it doesn't matter.
Mm.
I've got hybrids that are similar to what Shop Dad is famous for, and I've
Mm-hmm.
got really robust hybrids that you could throw down the stairs and you break your stairs. Um, so yeah, I've got everything. I have to have a little bit of everything because I don't know what people want when they hire us.
Mm. Yeah, and that was something that Shop Dad had recommended I talk to you about, and I think we'll get to that in just a moment because That's a whole world that I think a lot of folks don't know about. Is the behind the scenes stuff that the relationships between a lot of the shops. Now we've kind of established the how you got started and your first designs and how you got into the kind of that horror category. And now you've kind of evolved a little bit into that business to business category, where you are working with other shops. And why don't you take a moment and kind of give us a little bit of an idea of what that looks like for you?
So do you want more like a day-to-day breakdown or how I got into it? Like, I don't mind.
Sure. I think part of it is kind of what the services are that you provide.
Yep.
And then maybe get a little bit more specific.
Yeah, I can do that. So we have a notion of packages on the website, but it basically just breaks down all the different quantifiable parts of the process. So we will do anything from complete end-to-end for a consumer, which is going from I have an idea to I'm holding a silicone toy in my hand. Now, for business to business, B2B, that's slightly different because they tend to not want a single one-off piece. They typically will come in two categories for business. It will either be I want the ability to go commercial and I want your help. So that'll be making molds, making masters, that sort of thing. Or it will be the likes of I just want digital designs from you, or I just want some artwork.
Okay. And so somebody could come to you with a concept and then, I want something aquatic, and then sketch it up.
I mean, more often than not, and especially with private hires rather than commercial, people don't know what they want. The amount of people that have come to me, it might surprise you to say that some people have come to me never having a fantasy toy, but they'll pay for an entire bespoke piece just for them.
Wow.
Yeah, so having sizing conversations is difficult. So I'll say, how long do you want it to be? How wide do you want it to be? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's difficult. But, we muddle the way through. But, more often than not, a shop will have an idea or a sketch. We've had, some sketches. I've had 2-page essays from private clients about what they want. But I've also had private clients saying, I vaguely want this sort of thing. Can you come up with something?
Mm-hmm. Well, how long does that process take? If a retail customer came to you with a concept, how long would that take to go from concept to final product?
So if they only want digital, we have done it in 2 weeks. So you saw Talon from PPS. So that was done in sense of like normal calendar time. That was about 2 weeks.
Okay.
But we've had projects that we've done for other makers that have taken a couple of months. Purely digital.
Okay.
Whereas something that we did for Ravenous Toys, where it's cleaning up the digital file, printing the masters, making the mold, designing the shells, that sort of thing, that took 4 to 6 months.
Wow. Interesting. I hate talking price, but when I think about the amount of time and effort it would take to do a one-off for somebody, I can't come up with it just doesn't seem like a reasonable price. I can't come up with anything that would seem reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, It's a question that I've had for years now. Is people coming to me saying like, how shall I want to do this, but how shall I price it? Or I've talked to friends like Tibbs and things where they've talked about pricing. That is a very difficult thing to do, and it's getting harder with how the market is across the world. And the way I've always explained it is it depends on how much you value your time, how much work you get in, that sort of thing. And it's why I spend an awful lot of my resources working out how do I do something quickly to an acceptable level of quality. And it's something I've talked about with Shop Dad before, because he'll do something to perfection, but he's also extremely expensive. He'll admit that himself. But he does sandblasting and UV curing to a level of sophistication that we don't do. But that comes at a cost, and it comes at a time cost as well. So it's always a balance of how do you manage that so that it is viable. And there's lots of different strategies you can do that. You can do it through purely around discounts or your day rates, or you can divide the work between people so you can work on more projects at once to bring the cost down, your level of refinement, that sort of thing. There's lots of different things you can do to bring the cost down, but it's something that's easy to explain to someone if I wanted to go into that level of detail, but it's executing it so that it does work out in your bank account so that it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that I'm probably in the same category as Shop Dad, in that I'm not gonna say I'm a perfectionist, but I have a certain, I can't let things go. I get so wrapped up in it that, I keep going. I don't know when to stop.
Yeah, so I suffered that as well. And it was
teach
one
me,
of our mega...
Teach me, teach me how to stop.
Okay, so I can give you a phrase that I heard from somewhere, I don't remember where, and it opened up my eye to how I should do so. And this is something that I preach all the time now. So I had pretty much a breakdown working on, I think it was the Grand Deceiver. At the time, it was the most ambitious project we'd been hired to do. And it was cursed from the very beginning. And it got to a point where the project had been rolling on so long that I just thought it needs to get done. And someone, I don't remember who, said, perfection is the enemy of completed. Mm-hmm. And I went, oh my, yes, that's it. That's the answer. So I now do something to a level that I accept. It's not perfect. It will never be perfect. Even my best models that Shop Dad made, I finished because I was worried about it being damaged in transport. There are imperfections. Nothing I've ever produced is perfect, and it never will be. And I can't pursue that. For a start, it'll ruin me. Second of all, it'll ruin me emotionally. So don't try to do things perfectly.
Yeah, there was another one that I can't remember exactly. I'm going to have to look it up, and I'll throw it in on Twitter when I find it. It was something along the cost of perfection is excessive, or the cost of perfection is too high, or something like that. Or you can't afford the cost of perfection, or something. It was something along those lines. But and done is better than good, or done is better than perfect. Yeah,
it is. I mean, it can be with anything as well. Like there's shops that I've talked to that will do really quite impressive pours, but they'll find like a tiny smear or a nick or a tiny like a tooth or something that has got like its end blunted off or something like that, and they'll be miserable about it and they can't sell it and they'll want to redo everything. And it's like, you'll never, ever, ever have a successful business doing that. It'll ruin you.
Yeah. I came from a fine jewelry background, and I worked with with an artist, a jeweler, and it was, we were working with gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, fine jewelry, and we were doing everything from scratch, and there was a lot of perfectionism in that. And the nice thing about metal is that you can melt it back down and you can start over. Silicone, you can't do that. So
no, I mean, you could certainly melt it down, but it doesn't get you the result that you expect.
It does not. It does not. Now you said you mentioned Shop Dad, and you've worked with him a few times. Tell me about that relationship. How have you guys worked together?
So we've done lots of little things together. We very much have a bit of an echo chamber of ideas. We will talk technology a lot of the time. We talk material sciences. We talk about like different processes and things. And we also just talk stupid stuff quite often a lot. But he'll often test things with me. In the past, he's sent me experimental pigments. He's sent me files, all sorts of things. We run a lot of different ideas off each other. I mean, we've talked about everything from a magazine to voting contests, and we don't. I think that's why we get along. We just don't stop ever.
Yeah. Shop Dad and I chat fairly regularly. And we're always we're always bouncing ideas off of each other. And I mean, some of them are so random and so ludicrous that they'll never come to fruition. But if you don't have those random ideas, you'll never get to the ones that actually do make sense.
Well, this is the thing. Ideas are worthless. This is what hangs people up. They think, I don't want to do this thing because I've got this idea and I want to do it perfectly. Do you see a common thing going on here? So the problem is people get too invested in their ideas. But the problem is an idea is useless without execution. Like, you may as well tell everyone what your idea is if you're not going to do it.
Well, yeah, and I've had employees who they ask me, why do you tell everybody what you do, and why do you tell everybody how you do it? And I'm like, because number one, it's not a secret, and number two, the number of people who are actually going to do anything is vanishingly small, and number three, I don't see them as competition because they can't do what I do. And if they're going to do what they do, then they're not actually doing what I do. So they're not actually my competition. So, I've got no problem sharing and teaching people how to do it.
Same. I mean, that's why I got so involved in the maker community so early on, because, if I can work it out, then someone else can as well. And there's far more information there is now than there ever was before. Like when I started 2 years ago, like Linda said, there was basically nothing. There was a short series on Vimeo that everyone watched, that series, and that's how we started.
Yep, I remember. And every once in a while I go back and look at them and I'm like, okay, I get it.
That's the thing. I think, to some people, they're really bad. It teaches really bad practice and they're really dangerous. But equally, the concept is spot on. Mm-hmm. And the problem is when people don't do their own research to an adequate level, they need to take that and then keep looking. Don't take that and do that.
Right.
Because it wasn't refined enough. It was really obvious that there were steps missing.
Mm-hmm.
Times have changed.
Yeah. Spirit Particle asks, what model of resin printer do you use?
So I have a Mars 2 Pro, which is a brilliant little machine, great for R&D. Mostly use it for personal work and R&D small scale. Then I've got someone who works for me called Sticky. He might still be in the chat at the moment. He has a Mars 2 Pro, a Saturn S, and a Jupiter. So we've got a bit of everything.
Isn't the Jupiter, is that the fairly new one? The newest one?
Yeah, it was out not too long ago.
And they're fairly big, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, they're massive. You can put a Mars 2 Pro in it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it is enormous. It's like a small cabinet.
Wow.
They're really, really great machines.
I'm curious, any problems with shifting as you go up in length? Any problems with shifting?
Not that we've seen so far, and we've been, it's not a secret that we're really close to like Mish and Pat, and they have a Jupiter, and he's been tuning it in for a while, and I don't think they've experienced any issues.
Okay.
Whereas I did experience those when I had what I can only describe the most hated printer of my life, which was the Mono X when it first came out.
Okay. I like the Anycubic printers, but I have the small scale ones. I actually don't use resin for my masters anymore. I had a Pio Poly Moai, and that thing, I had probably 75% of my prints fail, and that ruined me on resin printers.
Yeah, I took a massive break from the Mono. It was just a bit of a notorious thing. I think, in credit to the Mono, it was one of the first. It was one of the first domestic machines on that scale with a mono screen. So it had a lot going for it, but it had a lot of problems. I know Shop Dad's got a couple of them. I think he might even have 3 now. So they are good machines, but you've got to know what you're doing, and you've got to have spare parts, which just didn't exist when I bought one. Like, Anycubic just didn't have any spares of anything.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that the screens on those are considered consumables.
They are. That was a shock to Sticky when I told him that. So yeah, but we get along really well with the Elegoo products. They've been really good. They're really cheap. They're very plug and play. And to me, the level of detail generally comes not from the screen, but from the post cleaning process.
Mm-hmm. And is that? And you're talking about cleaning or post processing?
So I consider both.
Okay.
If you want those nice glamour shots of just raw resin print, then you need to make sure you clean it properly. So we use heated ultrasonic cleaners. Okay. So that way we really break it down. We use a mix of resins depending on what it is that we need to do. But we'll deep clean them very thoroughly, and there's like no residue. And because of the chemicals we use, it doesn't even smell like resin either. Nice.
I'm impressed. Most people don't blend their silicones. Or not blend their silicones, blend their resins.
Yeah, I mean, something that I've started looking into. It's not difficult. It's just understand what you want. So Sticky generally uses 2 types of resin, and for the moment we keep them separate, but I've done a little bit here and there. So he'll use a clear resin if we want something that's like, a traditional epoxy resin. It's very hard, very firm, and it's clear, so it prints really, really nicely, and it's a little bit quicker. And then we also have water washable, which is what I primarily use. It's a bit softer, but it can be easier to clean up if we're having to fuse prints together.
I did see that Shop Dad is in the chat, so
yes, unfortunately so. I see you.
Let's see. We should probably not poke the bear.
Don't encourage him. Yeah, don't encourage him.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Shop Dad, and he gets so much credit for the wiki that exists, but I understand that you had a hand in that, or do you have hands? I assume that you have hands.
No, I do not have. No, I do not have hands.
Oh, but you participated in the wiki.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Shop Dad kind of pulled myself and Luke Cave into a chat, and he's like, "I want to do this." And we're like, "Yeah, I know. You've been talking about it for a while." So no, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it. And we're like, "Well, what are you thinking?" So we talked about loads of different ways. So I was talking about, you could do it as a WordPress website and then treat it like loading in certain posts and things like that, and depending on structure you can do it.
Right.
And it's just trying to figure out what it is he wanted to, what did he want to do, because he was talking about like a restricted area so that we could have like different levels of information or things like that. And then we started talking about, well, we could do a wiki, but obviously then most of the wiki platforms don't allow that sort of thing. So between myself and Luke, we kind of like, oh, what you need is like a CRM platform, because we both have the serious IT background. So we just worked it out for him and just told him, like, here's the link, go do it.
Okay.
And then occasionally I send him a message going, by the way, it's down again.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Well, it is a wonderful resource, which George has thrown a link into the chat, which is awesome. Let's see. Spirit Particle is asking, and this is a kind of it's a little bit of a longer question, but it's more of a explanation, kind of. Explain the process from resin print to casting. And also, do you have any problems with cure inhibition from your resins?
Okay, so there are a great many makers out there that, like something squishy that's on next week, that go out their way to find a resin that doesn't cause inhibition. But that sounds like work, and I don't do that. So what I do instead is I use a smooth-on product called Inhibit X.
Yeah.
So just to backtrack a little bit, so we'll print and we'll assemble our masters. We'll finish it. So I'll give it a gloss lacquer, yada yada yada, whatever it needs to be, and then I will coat that in 2 to 3 layers of this amazing smelling liquid. It shouldn't be. It's so dangerous. It's so caustic and bad for you, but it smells amazing. So you put that on, it evaporates, you put it on a few more times, and then you absolutely soak it in release agent.
Okay.
Like, you think, I can't possibly put any more, it's not going to cure because of how much I've put it on, and then you put more on. Because if you don't, your master will bind to the silicone in a way that you'll never be able to recover. So you really soak it, and that just comes from a little bit of practice. And depending on which silicone you use, it's a little bit grippier than others. So smooth on is consistently okay. If you use Platsil silicone, it is much grippier, so you have to use a lot more release agent. And then you just pop out the master, give it a little wipe down, spray it with some more release agent, and good to go.
And
so easy.
Your release agent, is that the Man Ease Release 200 or 205?
It's the spray. I wouldn't use the liquid. I can already see off a mile how difficult that could be to work with because of pooling, evaporating rates, that sort of thing. I think if you get the timing down and you have a very consistent modeling level of texture between the rest of it, then you should be fine. But that just feels like effort where I could just spray it and it's fine. I've never had a problem.
Okay. I actually keep both of them in my studio. I do resin casting as well as silicone, and I do laser engraving, and sometimes my masters are in wood. So it's actually better for me to use the 205 on my wood masters. So I actually have both of them in my studio. So
that makes sense.
let's see. Now, we have, you've talked a little bit about some of the folks that you have worked with, but you've worked with Something Squishy, Paladin Pleasure, Pleasure Forge, Fantasy Grove, Shop Dad, and let's see, who else? Am I missing somebody?
Dirty Bird Toys, ex Dirty Bird, rest in peace, Dirty Bird.
R.I.P.
And rip. And Ravenous Toys, that's another one. And we've worked with a couple of others that were very small time and aren't around anymore. I think I've probably, and we've done a little bit of work in the past for the Wandering Bard, and we're doing some work for them now as well.
Gotcha. Now, let's see. Trying to think, did I miss? There's a good question. I don't think we covered it, but we kind of touched on it. Magic Within was asking, as a creative, how did you learn to say this is good enough, or I'll only spend X amount of time on it?
Good question. So I will see at the beginning when I started doing the, when it's done, it's done. That was out of frustration. I could not do it anymore. These days, it's from a level of quality that I know that I can achieve 80% of the time without requiring rework. So I'll give examples of what doesn't bother me. So I use a spray-on clear lacquer to finish, to give that gloss finish. And if there is a small drip that I can barely feel with my fingernail, that's okay. Unless it's on like an obvious smooth surface. If it's on a detailed area, I just won't bother. Okay. Because, when you start marbling a pore or something, you will never see that. If it's a raised mark, so generally I'll close my eye and then I'll run my fingernail on it. Well, I'll rub my horns on it if I want to keep it character. And if I can feel it, then I'll generally sand it down and just give a little spot finish.
Okay.
So you kind of have to find the right level for you. And the process wasn't easy for me. So I would definitely find a healthier way of doing it.
Yeah. Anytime I bring home any kind of prototypes or samples and I show them to George, the first thing she does is close her eyes and rub her hands over it. And
yeah.
Very tactile.
Yeah, I mean, the human haptic sense is extremely powerful, and especially when it comes to strokers or penetration toys. Like I've had shops that haven't made them before ask what level of finish they should do, and I said not nearly to what you should do for an external piece, because the penis, even though it's sensitive, it cannot feel that sort of detail.
Mm-hmm. Aaron is in the chat. Just wondering if you can tolerate talking to one more person trying to get into this stuff. Yeah, I mean, drop your questions into the chat. Sure. Jump into Twitter conversations. Watch the videos. Get into the Discords. Get into the wiki. There's tons of information out there. We're all resources for you. Yeah, happy to help. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I find more often than not. So I was that guy, that started getting into it, and I sent a message to Carabiner. And for those who don't know Carabiner, he runs WereDog, and I sent a message to him going, "Hey, I'm kind of looking into doing this. How do you do it?" And no one likes that question because it's lazy, even though it came from a genuine place. So what you need to do is do your research first and then ask a specific question. And then if you find the right person, they will probably answer you. Don't say, what silicone do I need?
Hmm.
It's so easy to find that answer. But if it's, when I'm 3D modeling something and I'm getting this weird artifact appearing whenever I use the smooth tool after I've remeshed to this level, like what causes that?
Yeah.
Someone like Shop Dad will go, oh, that's interesting. I like that. That's an interesting question.
Hmm. Or you see, you've done a casting and you take a picture of a flaw and you're going, what caused this?
Yeah, so there was a great example from Magic Within, actually,
Hmm.
who was on Twitter just the other day, who showed off his work. And for those who haven't seen his work, you should. Like, I love, hand sculpting because of my experience of doing it, and he does it to a level that I can't do. That's why I love it. But they were getting the positive air pockets, so they're filled in. It's a defect in the mold, and their question is, what's causing this? And I'm like, now that is someone that's tried and doesn't know. So that's when I will voluntarily go in and go, well, it's these situations that cause it, and these are what sorts of things you should try and do to avoid it. So we'll see what the next mold causes.
It's funny, as we're talking here, somebody was in the chat asking what silicone I use because I don't like smooth on.
No, I do not. I do not like smooth on. They did a price increase of 70% in the UK last year, and they've done a price increase this year of 30% on top. So I do not use smooth on anymore for silicone.
Yeah. I chose not to use them because I just I don't like the viscosity. I don't like the settling.
I hate the settling. The settling drives me bonkers. So I still use a little bit of the the 0050 reserve that I've got, and I was finishing it up, and it was like a centimeter thick, whereas I use Platsil, and it's weird Platsil because part A is a different viscosity to part B.
It is,
but it's so useful because if you walk away and come back, you just got to tip the jug a little bit and you remember which one's which.
Yeah.
But there's no sediment. I've got. So you guys work with gallons, so I've got multiple 5-gallon drums out there, and I can guarantee you, my left horn, that there is not an ounce of sediment in them at all.
And the other thing I like about them is I like the viscosity. I like the fact there's not any sediment. I like the cure times. There's a lot of stuff I like about the Polytech silicones. So somebody asked in the chat what silicones I use or what silicone I use. I use Polytech.
Yep, Polytech all the way. Yeah, a big shout out to Tentacle Toys, Fran Tentacle. So she's big special effects industry expert. She's worked in it for many years, and she put me onto it. The pricing is amazing. The people have been really helpful, and the products are fantastic. Like, I would definitely recommend people try it. They take more research and practice. They are not as easily accessible, especially when it comes to wanting certain firmnesses, because you have to blend. Because they don't do a medium firmness out of the pot.
And that was one of the things I loved about it, was that I could blend, and it was now I will say that in certain parts of the world, Polytech is cheaper than smooth on. Not in the United States.
UK for sure.
Not in the United States.
I heard that.
It's actually about 30% more expensive for Polytech than smooth on in the United States.
Yeah, I heard that when I was talking to some of my friends. I was a little bit surprised, but no, in the UK it's substantially cheaper. Substantially cheaper.
Yep. So it's do your research. I will always send people towards smooth on to start with, just because it's a known quantity, and there's so much resource. There's so many resources out there for folks that it's a great place to start. So I'll always point in that direction.
I
So,
mean, the reason why I used Smooth On for the longest time is because I liked having essentially a material standard in the industry, because that's what effectively it's become.
mhm.
And it's great to be able to diagnose stuff. And it also is interesting to be able to compare problems. So a few years ago, I don't know if you remember hearing about it, but they had a real wacky firmness situation where like 0030 was coming out 20. Sometimes 50 was curing like within a couple of minutes, and that was coming
Oh
out either
wow.
too hard. Yeah, it was all over the shop.
No, I did not hear that. So,
Yeah, it was a big thing.
let's see. I answered the question from Spirit Particle. I got the one from Magic Within. Um, have you had any problems getting silicone?
Smooth on, yes. Polytech, no.
Hmm.
So when things got really bad in lockdown, 0050 became very challenging to get hold of. Strangely enough, 00220 was fine, but I guess not many people tend to order it. 30, as long as I timed it right, I never had any problems. But I used to have to wait like a month or two for medium at times, and that's because it used to ship from Texas, I think it did. So it would literally come over by boat. I looked into EU suppliers. I think they're the ones that a few of the other shops would use, and they are so expensive. I really feel for some of the EU guys at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The who was it? Kizu and Friends. They're in Finland, and they have to
Mhm.
bring their silicone in from the Netherlands.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, they're based in Sweden, aren't they? If I remember rightly, I can't
Uh,
remember.
no, I think they're Finland.
Are they in Finland?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that whole part of the whole like Scandinavian kind of portion is a very kind of expensive area anyway. Finland, there you go.
Yeah.
God, what would you do without her?
I know.
Yeah, I mean
George is
that's
great.
yeah, yeah. I mean they're quite an expensive area, so I'm not even remotely surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. What's your favorite of all the things that you do, and of all the things that you do for all the other makers? What is your favorite thing?
I like taking the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so my favorite thing, honestly, so my favorite thing is being reliable. So I kind of come at this as a very different kind of point of view to a lot of people probably expect. I'm very business orientated, so I like being a supplier that's reliable to people more than anything else. So we're a creative studio, but like a lot of the creative aspects that people see, aside from like website graphics, isn't done by me. They're done by people far more talented than me. So I handle business, and I do all business strategy and accounts and all of that sort of thing. So that I like being reliable to other people.
And that's something. Um, it's really hard to find people who are reliable.
Yeah,
Geez. Employees.
they're the worst, aren't they? Just absolutely the worst. Like if I could just get rid of them all.
I know. It's so bad.
There's an idea.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
I've just seen Nix's message in the chat. That's fine. I mean, some of them are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yosh asking, what's your preferred firmness to work with?
Probably medium, because a lot of what people want require that color distinction. Also, I mean, this is probably really nerdy for silicon, but when you pour that medium firmness like, when you're mixing it and stuff, it sounds like backwards sellotape, and it's really satisfying. So it makes like this like ribbony sound when you're pouring it. That kind of sounds like sellotape being pulled backwards. It's fantastic. It's like
What is
yeet.
what's medium for you?
050.
Okay, gotcha.
The worst is A10. It's just awful.
I was going to say, I'm going to do last call on questions. So if you have questions, get them into the chat, and George will get them wrangled for us, and get them into the list here. Do you do politics?
Generally not, but I'm feeling particularly sassy with how everything's going these days.
Magic Within was asking, how was Brexit for you guys?
Oh, I hated everything about it. I passionately hate Brexit. I'm a very firm believer in community, and I think it was one of the most fundamental stupid mistakes that we've ever done in our history, aside from probably the 100 Years' War. But it doesn't need to be that long. But no, Brexit was just absolutely terrible. And the problem is, there's so much fallout from that, and there's been no accountability.
Well, even aside from the political aspect of it, were you impacted in any way?
I mean, it still impacts now because, sometimes even getting printers over here, like people will say, we don't ship to the UK. There's other problems that other shops have now been imposed. I mean, 95% of my business comes from America. And there's, tax rules about Americans having to, deal with tax laws in the UK. And, there's just lots of things that just come in that have just made life fundamentally harder because we can't just play along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can imagine. I saw a lot of the stuff. I mean, from over here, we see it from the outside, and so it's not. I don't have the experience of it.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine. And
yeah, no, it was a very difficult time. People would have like surprising views, where you just sat there next to your coworker and they're like, I can't wait to get out of there because blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what? I thought I knew you. What's going on? But yeah, no, it's just very difficult. But, politics is the same everywhere. So politicians rolled out their buses with slogans that turned out to be lies, and there were no consequences. And it's just fundamentally broken as a process. And that was probably like the first big problem for our country, in my opinion.
Okay. Frostaku asking, with the shop getting bigger and bigger, what's the biggest issue you've encountered?
I'm running out of space. I mean, space is always an issue for a maker. This is something I always talk to new shops. It's like, you will never have enough space. So I make do. So I could do with a bigger space just to fit the equipment and the materials. But time is always difficult. When you sell services, you're essentially selling your time, and you can't sell more of your time because there's so much time in the day.
But you can sell other people's time.
Yes, and I do that very well.
But that just means you have to bring more and more people in, and you need more space to put them, and you can't stack them like cattle.
Well, you say that. I mean, you shouldn't is probably the way you should say that.
You shouldn't. Yes. Ben asking, what's your favorite holiday for themed pours? What's your favorite holiday for doing themed pours?
So this is probably where we're a little bit different to a lot of other people. Is we don't do drops. So I don't really have themes. I suppose the closest thing I have is I've got two theme colours that I did last year. I haven't had time this year, which is known as a Bloody Awful Night, which is a red drip over a sparkly black toy, and that was for World Blood Donation Day,
Okay.
and I did a Pumpkin's Dream, which was a fade with an orange strip. So those are my favorites. Those will be coming back hopefully in November, but I typically don't do drops. Nothing against anyone else that does them, but I don't like them.
I'm with you. As George says in the chat, I'm a little salty about drops. I again, like you, I'm not against anybody who does them. I just don't
No.
like them. I feel
Yeah,
like
I'm
they
very much I'm happy. I'll never tell anyone how to do their business.
right.
No matter how badly I think they're doing it. But, ultimately they're the business owner and make business decisions. So for me, I'm not a fan of FOMO,
Right.
the fear of missing out. So I try to always make sure that people have ample opportunity, even for something limited. So we've got our sandworm out, which is a seasonal toy at the moment. But I've given people a month, and if people want a custom of that, it's for a month. Like, I don't want people rushing into things.
Yeah. And from a business perspective, I also think it's kind of dangerous because you've got all of this material wrapped up into product that may not
Yes.
even sell.
Yeah, I mean, that is a fundamental problem now as well. I mean, a lot of makers that know me know that I watch them so I can keep an eye on market trends and understand how business strategies fit. And most makers right now have a high surplus of material on their shelf. Some shops have a substantial amount. And, for some shops, that's okay. Like, they don't mind. For some shops, that's normal. But, what I've said publicly before is you got to look at how bad things are right now, because think of a shop that hasn't run a giveaway, hasn't run a sale, hasn't run a new product in the last 6 months. You will not be able to find one. People are really struggling right now. Things are really, really bad for shops.
Yeah, I people keep saying, "Oh, the recession is coming. The recession is coming." No, it's here.
Yeah,
It's
no,
here.
it's here. The cost of the quality of life and the cost of living crisis has hit, and it's getting worse. I am actively telling anyone who will listen, don't save for 6 months, save for 12. Like, this isn't going to blow over in 6 months. Like, if you're running a shop, scale down where you can and be sensible about your business decisions, because things are really not good right now and they will get worse. Like, the boom is over for COVID. So I
Yeah.
feel sorry for new shops entering right now because they are in for a tough ride.
I remember now May was a weird month for me. I had so 2021 I had kind of a good month. May 2021 I had a really good month on social media. It was a good month.
Yep.
May 2022 my traffic was down on my website by 90%.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
literally 90%.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I've seen drops done by shops that have decreased 50, 60. I've seen shops nearly lose 80% of their sales in a drop. So, like, think about that. Could you imagine overnight losing 80% of your sales? Like, gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember where I read an article that sex workers and strippers in particular were the canaries in the coal mine in a sense of the economy. That as the economy kind of slows down, that strippers are the first ones to feel it, because businesses, people are not going out to strip clubs, etc. And that they were seeing it back in like February of this year.
Yeah, I can believe that. I mean, again, look at OnlyFans. Look at some of the biggest content creators. How many of them are literally right now running 60% off?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Spirit Particle asking, do people prefer anthro stuff or is size more popular?
So that's a good question because they're kind of intertwined, though, aren't they? Um, Size is more impressive when you use something bigger, but it doesn't sell as often as people sound. So people always want bigger, but bigger doesn't sell as much.
Yeah.
What sells is small and medium. So any new shop, I always say small and medium, small and medium. So mostly I sell mediums. Anthro, I mean, that kind of covers a lot of different things. For me personally, kaiju is popular right now. For other shops, it all depends how furry orientated they are, I guess. Because mine's more monster, it kind of changes a bit.
I remember when I first started, I was doing my research, and when women were polled of what they wanted, they generally wanted something that was just slightly bigger than the average male. And so they wanted something that was something around 6.5 to 7 inches. And
yeah, that's a good medium. Fucking hero.
Yeah, George is over there laughing.
No, tell about the research you.
Just like 20 or nothing.
Let's see. Would you mind sharing the story behind the purple monster?
That's a good question. So, not much of what I do when it comes to the business is accidental. Everything is very planned. So, Fergus, very early on, we're talking like before a logo existed, was something I had in mind. Like, I wanted a character. Didn't look like this, didn't sound like this, didn't have a name. But I knew I wanted a customer services character. And I wanted that character to be the logo. 2 birds, 1 stone. Now I've done, like, for a hobby, I run businesses. This is my 3rd or 4th business that I've run. So I understand the importance of having simple logos that you can slap on anything.
Yeah.
So I doodled, and I like American football. So I was like, American football. I like monsters. I'll see what they've got. Goblins, one-eyed monsters. I was like, I want it to be, something simple. I quite like the joke of a one-eyed purple monster. So, I kind of went down that route. I did some doodling and eventually kind of came with this sort of character. I do have the original drawings that I'll post on Twitter at some point. And then I had my then business partner create the logo. And eventually I got Scribble to do the icon that you can see up here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then I just came up with Fergus because it was a funny name for a furry character. And monster because I am one.
Yosh in the chat, 2 horns, 1 monster.
That's a video on the dark web.
Do you have an OnlyFans?
No, I genuinely thought of making one and just having me drink tea on it.
I finally figured out why Shop Dad calls it Only Goblins.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Oh, jeez. Let's see. Well, you kind of touched on this one. What are your best sellers and the most popular kinds of toys?
So my bestseller at the moment is Shin, which is the one we released last Halloween, which is based on Shin Godzilla, which has proved very popular. It's the one that's got the spine, it's got the ribs, look very deformed, that sort of thing. That one's still very popular. And then after that, it sort of mixes around depending on month to month.
Ooh. What about other materials besides silicone?
So I have a lot of materials to hand that I like to use to experiment with, so I can always pull it if I need it for whatever project. So I have done stuff with resin. I've got some two-part epoxy resin, I've got UV resin, and I've got like smooth cast and things like that.
Okay. Any wood? Do you work with wood at all?
No, I have done in the past, and I've got all my power tools and things, but I just don't have space.
Okay. All right. What's in your studio playlist?
The cop-out answer is I listen to everything. I've got a playlist that I've been honing for years and years and years. It's got a bit of everything, but my last music, or the music I typically listen to, I listen to a lot of Rammstein. A lot of Rammstein. I listen to... In fact, let me pull up my Spotify right now, I can tell you.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
George is over here. She is moaning in despair at the Rammstein. I'm a fan as well. So
I've listened to them for decades now. It's really quite tragic. Yeah, so oh god, yeah, my top songs are just an absolute mess. I've got some metal covers. I've got a Harry Styles song that I got into when I was on holiday with kids. I've got the Munsters TV show theme.
George is wearing Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk into this. Yeah,
I've got that in somewhere. Yeah, a little bit of Kraftwerk. I've got everything. I've just got everything. a lot of duck synth as well.
Any old industrial or well, you said synthwave, so you might like some of the old goth stuff, like Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah, I've got, like I said, it's just a bit of everything. I've got a huge collection of like female lead. I've got a playlist specifically of like female lead music, ranging from Evanescence to In the Moment, and obscure stuff. Just a little bit of everything.
All right. Okay, so tell me about an epic fail that you've had.
I mean, I would like to say that, it's so difficult. I can't think of any because I'm just so good. No, I can tell you exactly. Okay, so buckle in, children. So when I was trying to make my first ever hybrid molds with a 3D printed shell, first of all, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I made a shell that was essentially a box with the large Frankie carved out the middle. It took a week to print in 8 sections, and it took 2 kilos of filament. First step.
For anybody who doesn't realize, 2 kilos that's 2 full rolls of filament.
Yeah.
And each one of those rolls is anywhere from it's $20+. You can do the conversion to whatever currency you use per roll. All right. Now, and that's not even counting the master itself. So, yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. So this is actually a story. Okay. Oh, God. Okay. So, oh, God. Okay. So I made it, I put it together, I glued it together. And it was great because I use this wondrous glue called hot glue, and it just seals everything, right? It just seals everything. You never leak. So I then...
Famous last words.
So I put in Frankie. It's a large Frankie. Good to go. It's like 12, 13 inches long. It's a big model. Pour in the silicone. I was using Dragon Skin 10. It's a 10A firmness. It's quite firm. And I poured it in and I walked away. And then I came back half an hour later and it's all over the table. 2 liters. 2 liters. It's everywhere. And I'm like trying to pour it back in.
So to give for folks who don't understand, 2 liters is about half a gallon. A gallon of Smooth On is going to run you about $250.
Yes.
So that's $125, $150 worth of silicone all over your table.
Yes. So then I'm trying to pour it in, and eventually I gave up and I just walked away. So I cracked that mold open, and it was like a quarter full cured. So I peeled it apart and was like, great, I'll do it again. So I did it again the same way. But I watched it leak this time. So I chucked it away. And I left it for months and months and months. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a glove mold. And do you know what? I'm going to pre-order it. And Kitty pre-ordered it. And people in the community know Kitty. She was in the chat earlier. And she pre-ordered it. So I was like, I can't get this wrong. So I started making a glove mold. But do you know what? It is freezing in the UK in the winter. It was like 2 degrees in the studio, which I don't know what that is in magical Fahrenheit. Probably like, I don't know, 7,001. I don't know. I think it's like 40.
Yeah, it's about 40 degrees.
Yeah, it's really cold. So I did it in front of a heater. So the silicone half cured on the model. But it's okay because I was peeling it off.
But only on the side facing the heater.
Yes. And then the master bent because it melted because it's made of PLA.
Oh my god.
It doesn't end there. So I learned my mistake.
You learned from that?
So I remade the master. And I did it again. A year later, I redid it properly and it worked absolutely fine and it's glorious, but I had to do it a completely different way. So that's the worst mistake I've ever done. I've got a second worst one that is just as expensive. This is why people hire me, because I make expensive mistakes for them.
So that took you, what, 15 months to make?
Yes. Yes.
And Kitty waited 15 months for this?
No, she only probably waited about 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the worst mistake I've ever done. I've got a second one where it isn't nearly as dramatic, but is just as expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, more expensive, I think.
Okay.
Yes, more expensive.
Go for it. I'm just loving it.
Yeah, you're laughing at my pain. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got this really simple kaiju for Zilla's tail. It's basically a triangle. It's as easy as it gets. So I think I'm gonna make a block mold. And I've been at this for like a year and a half since then, so I know what I'm doing. So I don't make a hybrid shell. I don't make a printed shell or anything. I just make a cardboard shell. And someone forgot how much negative space there is when you taper something that much. So I was like, this is going to be like a couple of liters. I'll have this done in no time. I'll bang it out. It'd be great. So I put in 2 liters and it doesn't really even touch the sides. So I then pour in more. I make another 4 liters and it only does half. And that's when it gets worse, people. That's when it gets worse, because that's when it goes from having the base and it's like 2.5-inch diameter to tapering down to, I don't know, 0.9 of an inch at the tip. And I've got straight walls. This thing is a cylinder. So I'm pouring in gallons. Gallons. So after I've poured in every gallon I have, I've got about 2 inches off the top that I still need to do. And do you know what I do? I don't just thicken it and put it over the tip. No. That would be the easy thing to do. No, I think I've gone down this path so far. I'm going to use 0050. So I make up 4 litres of 0050. And I pour that on top. And thankfully it cured. But it is heavy. So heavy. It is the most expensive mold I own. I've only just paid it off.
And so you and so when you set it down, I assume that the tip, the 0050 that is supporting all of that, it wobbles.
It wobbles.
Jeez. So the last question I was going to ask.
I'm a professional, everyone. Please hire me.
The last question I was going to ask was, what does success look like for you? But
not that.
The first thing that came to mind was, well, a good mold.
Yeah.
So, tell me, what does success look like for you?
For the moment, it's just positive growth. That's probably success right now. It can come in lots of different forms. We'll have what I consider success being very public. Hopefully next month, if everything ties up nicely with deadlines. But personally, right now, it's just growth. With growth, you can get more revenue, can get more success, but equally, it's managing that growth that is the killer of shops if you're not prepared for it. So, having a popularity and a growth, that for me is very important. And straight off the bat, I've always been very honest and transparent, and being known for that is really quite critical. So I don't mind talking about processes and things like that. I don't really do anything special, especially when it comes to mold making.
Nix was asking, how much did that set you back on that mold? It sounded like it was at least 3 gallons.
It would be at least 350 quid, at least.
Okay.
For a single mold.
Mm-hmm.
Just try and work it out quick. I mean,
well, how many gallons?
Gallon, oh yeah, no, that'd probably be more like 400 or 500 actually.
So was that at least 3 gallons?
Yeah, something like that. It'd be about 500 pounds, something like that.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you do it, if it's at least 3 gallons, that's $750.
Yeah, I mean, this is slightly old prices with old conversion rates. So it was substantial.
Let's see. Was there anything else? I don't think so. Well, it's about time to wrap it up. I would ask you to say goodnight and wave goodbye to everybody, but you don't have hands, so
no. But I can.
You can wave. You can wink. You can give us a little wink.
Yeah. I'll give you the saucy eye.
All right. Well, Fergus, thank you so much for joining me, and give everybody a little wink. Hang out for a few minutes, and I will catch up with you in just a moment.
Will do. Bye, everyone. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Yay! Oh my God, that was. I'm over here dying. I have never laughed so hard. I mean, aside from aside from the conversation I had with Linda from Paladin Pleasure, I mean, oh, geez. Okay, so that was Fergus from Monster Smash Studios, and so much fun. I absolutely had a blast. I've never had a chance to talk face to face with a monster, and I am looking forward to doing it as soon as possible. And next weekend we have Allison from Something Squishy, and we'll do this again next weekend, Sunday night, 7 o'clock. And don't forget, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Amavidi. And with that, I'm out, and we'll see you next week. Bye.